Hello, I'm Matt Malone. I'm going to introduce myself. So, would anybody mind if I get a little bit controversial? Is anybody still awake? Yes. Because this is the hard slot, everybody, all right? I just want to point that out. So, Matt Malone from KPMG. I look after all our risk and compliance advisory and assurance work in our corporates business. So it's everything that's non-financial services. But actually, I used to work in banking. So hopefully, for those of you in non-banking clients, anyone who's in a non-banking, great. So actually, it's about a 50-50 mix. So we can talk about both. So let's start. The topic is the future of risk. I guess that all depends on the timeline you're looking at. And one thing I wanted to pick up from Soren was the sort of short term, how effective is risk and compliance today? And I'd argue it's not working. So I said I'd be a bit controversial. I don't think it's working. So if we're going to talk about the future, we need to acknowledge that and then move on and talk about how we can really fix that. I guess that gives you a bit of an introduction to the objectives. I'm going to give you a view of why I have this slightly challenging view of risk management and compliance, then talk about the future, and then talk about, hopefully, give you a practical framework to think about how you look and change this. And then I'm going to talk about technology and how technology can use to accelerate this solution. And something called Powered Risk, which you might recognize the company whose technology we're using with that. So I shall skip through this. No, you don't want to read this. Right, so current view of risk. We're all constantly hearing about change and the acceleration of change and how change is now the norm. I've tried to break that into three areas, and you know, for those of you dealing with regulatory compliance, changing customer needs, society, etc., there's a whole host of increasing external expectations. I don't think it's ever been this mad. Okay, so I'll come on and talk about a few of those in a minute. Along with that, we're also hearing about disruption. So yes, digital is disrupting a lot of things, but also customer needs are driving that as well. And the expectations on organizations are getting tougher and tougher. On top of that, organizations are now being expected, you're all under cost pressures, you're all under performance pressures, we all got to do more for less. And on top of that, the general scrutiny that's coming on all our businesses, not just from regulators, but from shareholders, customers, etc., is getting worse and worse and worse. So the need to be transparent, the need to run your organization in a better way is here with us at the moment. So I've just summarized that in a sort of natty little diagram. But in essence, the real challenge organizations are having and leaders are having is, what on earth are the priorities now for risk and compliance? How do I cope with all this stuff? And also, you know, how many of you have changed your principal risks in the last year? Or are you still got the same ones? So you've changed them, good. Because the environment is moving faster than the annual principal risk process. So how can we run a corporate governance process that isn't fast enough for the industry? Does this all make sense? Does everybody agree with this? There's a few nods, all right? Well, it must be true because this is the last sort of 18 months, 2 years of some scandals. I've obviously saved kept the names off. But there's a lot of scandals going on there. And I don't think, you know, as again, to my point, I don't think things are working as well as they should do, okay? So therefore, there's a massive role for risk. There's a massive opportunity. And I think, sorry, you know, the point you made around we need to get our act together a little bit more because we need to get our arms around this stuff. So, what do I mean by that? Well, I think our businesses see risk as a function. Risk isn't a function, it's a thematic approach to strategy, okay? We don't turn around and have cost as a function. We shouldn't have customer as a function. It's something we all do. It's something we all own. So there's a real need to change the mindset and understanding of risk and compliance in our organizations. And I'll talk through how to do that later. The other thing is that all of you find that you're probably pushed to tactical solutions and you're not getting the right levels of investment for what you want to do. Does that make sense? Is anybody rolling in it, having all their plans delivered as and when they want, right? It's really frustrating, and I know because I've sat in your roles. So how do we move this up the strategic agenda? How do we get the right investment in digital solutions, in data, in MI, and in the broader sort of people skills that we need? And just to sort of bring that to life, so here's one of our many, many frameworks. I'm not expecting you to read this in too much detail, but here's a standard op risk model framework. Where would you place yourself? Where do you think, and I've got data on the UK from quite a few companies, where do you think everybody ends up? Go on, shout a number out, go on. 3. Anyone for 4? No. Right. Most organizations are 2s and 3s. And actually, if you had the money to do 5, you'd probably be slightly crazy, right? But why are we down in the 2s and 3s on some obvious things that we need to be flexible and agile and joined up and automated, yeah? Something's not working. So let's re-ask the question about what is risk management. I quite like this definition. So this is about 2 things. It's about protecting value, and it's about growing value. How many of us get to talk about the grow bit? Yeah? How many of us get to get involved in the annual strategy cycle, the annual planning cycle? It doesn't take place. This is all about how we change the perception of risk. So, how do we do that? Well, we really need it. Do all of you have a seat at the table? I don't expect everybody does. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we embed risk better in the business operating model, not just in the risk operating model. And then finally, how well do you drive your change programs? How well, again, someone was giving some really good examples about making change happen. Because it's hard. And why is risk and compliance usually the ones that feel like they're delivering the really painful projects? So we need to change that. So is everybody buying into this hypothesis at the moment? Yep. Yes, Matt. It's horrible being a risk and compliance person in the world at the moment. We need to change it, yeah? Are we all up for that? I know it's 4 o'clock. I know we're all tired. Right, so we went and every year we talk to 150 CEOs. So let's get a view of what, this is 150 in the UK, but it's a global survey. And what came back from this survey, and I'm only looking at the UK view, is this is what your CEOs are worrying about, okay, in terms of headlines. So they're worrying about their resilience, right? Are we still going to be here? Can we actually protect ourselves in the world we're in today? How are we addressing the technology, climate, and political risks? Let's face it, if you happen to be in BT right now, you're probably quite worried about what's going to happen to you. How do we challenge our business models and adapt at the pace that we need to, right? These are the really scary stuff that's facing CEOs. How do we be more dynamic, and how do we work better with each other? Soren, you've just got 2 people who should love each other and work together on a daily basis, and they don't. There's conflict, and don't worry, it's the same in every organisation I've ever worked in. Right? So how do we shift that to make risk management way more adaptive? How do we bake it into the business model? How do we look outside? How do we look forward? How do we really make emerging risks an exciting subject? How do we move away from this annual cycle? Which face it, I don't know about you, but all I see is people fudging the sort of emerging risk cycle every year and going, hey, what should we include this year? And I know I did it. I didn't fudge it, but I used to have to run the cycle. And it was really hard getting people motivated 2 months out to actually really do this properly and really challenge the organization, particularly all the risks we already knew that existed. And let's get, as I've said, let's get risk management part of strategy and execution. So I put it to you that we need to challenge the status quo. And I'd like to empower you and get you excited about doing that. Carrying on with the CEO views. So 67%, or you can read the numbers, but 67% want to spend money on tech. They want to digitize their businesses. So why isn't your next risk or compliance program actually piloting some of that digitization? Get yourself on the bandwagon, okay? 62% of CEOs want to actually see transformation work. It's too overwhelming. So when the next time you have a crisis, an issue, or a major risk, let's use that to drive a much more transformational, sustainable solution. Sorry, are you laughing? Because did you manage to change the business as you went for MiFID II? For us in the UK, SMCR is a massive opportunity to change the governance behaviors and the culture of the organization. Did you manage to break into that? So for those of you not in financial services, there's a whole host of activities and initiatives that need that, okay? Moving on, 87% believe you should connect front, middle, and back office. Hey, this goes back to the whole point about risk being a function. And risk teams not working together, okay? I'll talk about an example later, but we managed to, sorting out a massive risk issue in one of our clients just involved creating a one risk connected organization where finance, legal, compliance, et cetera, actually worked with each other. Because that's how they were going to avoid the next big, black swan that was coming their way. 87%, we've done that. So, and then alliances. Why try and do this all in-house? You're going to have to go for better, cheaper, smarter, quicker, cooler, snazzier. You're going to have to do it, all right? That's the expectation of CEOs. Everybody agree with this so far? Yes, Matt? No, Matt? We're going to give you lots of hard questions at the end? Okay. So here comes the radical bit, okay? I don't think CEOs are thinking enough about risk and compliance, and I think this is what they really should be thinking about. So I'm going to push the envelope out to about 5 years now. So how's risk positioned today? And you can read this, but it's all about cost avoidance. It's all about let's get just compliant. Sorry. Again, I'm picking on you, but you're my only friend in here at the moment. But your definition of compliance is let's just do the bare minimum and let's get it covered, right? Regulators don't make up rules for a laugh. They're doing it to protect markets or protect customers, etc. So why don't you just be really good in the market? Why don't you just be absolutely amazing for customers? Because you won't need to be regulated, okay? Let's change this. Let's move to, in the future, your purpose will be about brand protection and value creation. We're already seeing that move. That's where companies are going. That's how you're going to be valued going forwards. Let's look at the risk priorities. So all of you will have these as principal risks. If you haven't, write it down and go back to your company because I would be very, very, very worried. But they're your principal risks today, okay? This just says, I don't have my operating model running properly. Yeah? Actually, what you need to be worrying about, and where I think we will be, and this is how companies are going to be valued in about 5 to 10 years' time, it will be about brand. It will be about transparency. It will be how agile is your business and operating model. You're going to be worrying more about talent in the future than you ever have done. And we'll begin thinking about how we actually run our AI technology ecosystem inside and outside the organization. And a lot of our audit and assurance work will be around algos and AI. We're already doing that today. And finally, and here comes the really controversial piece, I don't think first, second, and third line actually work very well together. And I don't know if in your organization, if anybody's reached nirvana in terms of actually getting that to work. In the future, I don't think there will be a second line. I think technology could play that role, and our brilliant, and by the way, I've been in a compliance role, our brilliant compliance people will be driving growth and innovation in the first line. I pause for effect. So hopefully any second line people want to come and talk to me later. But, the future is actually quite exciting. I'm trying to paint an exciting picture, not a scary picture, okay? And on top of all of that, and I'm not going to go into this diagram, the whole organizational paradigm is twisting on its head as we start to put technology in. Right now, risk isn't part of this discussion in many of the clients I talk to, okay? We need to be part of that discussion. So, it's very, very easy for someone to stand on stage and give you lots of it's all broken and it doesn't work. And actually CEOs aren't valuing you enough and you need to do something. So let me give you a framework that we use regularly to have these conversations, because we're running a whole host of programs at the moment with very large-scale organizations who are going on a risk transformational journey. Okay? It can be done and it is possible. Really, really simple diagram, he says. But we all spend most of our time in that bottom box called risk management framework. Right? We love it. We feel very, very safe and secure in there. And all we're doing is slowly evolving risk and compliance. We're not changing, transforming. We're not actually, if there's anybody, sorry, the reason for that hard question around vision is I'd like to almost, there should be a point where you're actually saying, I want to be in that top box. I want to be helping shape the strategy of the organization. And right now, part of what you're having to deal with is the day-to-day battles of actually just trying to get the stuff done, trying to get loads of work, more work than you've got people, which is usually the case. So that's the situation we are. And it's basically back to that point about being undervalued. So we're trying already today just to get the machine to work. We can get the machine to work a lot better if we can move up into making that risk operating model part of the operating model. Because often governance itself doesn't work. Risk governance will work, but the governance of the organization doesn't necessarily work. For those of you sat in board meetings or sort of risk committees where it's the same old stuff and you're not really asking the right challenging questions and you're not really investing in the right programs. And then moving up to the sort of strategy and culture. And I have put culture in with strategy because I feel that in a lot of the work we do, culture is one of the biggest barriers to change. And it really does need to help unlock the organization in terms of where you're going. And the best way to sort of frame this is in these three areas, in mindset, design, and delivery. Go and ask your organization what type of risk management it wants, what type of compliance it really wants. And it goes back to those CEO questions. It doesn't want a tactical, hard work, exhausting barrier to change. What it wants is some partner who's going to really help you go places and create value. Therefore, you're going to have to design this. You can't keep tweaking the bits of the risk environment you've got. It's too hard. It's time to take a step back and actually say, what type of risk capabilities do we want? What type of compliance capabilities? How do we want them to join up? I think it's a brilliant question around what type of operating model do I want? At the moment, if you're not careful, you'll just evolve to something because some bloke's better at risk and compliance than somebody else. That's not the answer. What's the best risk and compliance structure that you need to deliver the business model or business models? What we find in a lot of our clients is they'll have one risk and compliance function running 5 different business models. So you'll have a new ventures business that is incredibly dangerous, risky, and crazy, and it's all run by digital people that don't even want to let you in the door, versus you'll have a cash cow somewhere that you've got compliance sitting all over it, monitoring everything. Let's get this balance right. Let's get innovative about how we do that. And the last point is around delivery. And all of you know, and sorry, and if I had one of your diagrams up, it would be great, but we all build these lovely processes. And then in about a year's time, we say, actually, are we following the process? And people go, oh, yeah, honest we are. And assurance go in, and they suddenly find out no one's following the process at all because they've found little get-arounds, etc. We've got clients that have 20 different trading systems, And they use the trading system that has less sanctions on it because it's easier to get stuff done. We're sort of missing the point on this. So that is hopefully a simple, pragmatic framework, but it's the conversation you need to go and have, and it's breaking out of that. So again, Matt, that sounds like really great theory. Are you really doing it? Yes, so here are 3 live client examples at the moment where there was a trigger for a need for a program, but a trigger for a different conversation. And what I'm suggesting you do is go and have that different conversation when the opportunity arises. So one example where, for those of you who have to comply to SOX, anyone have to comply to SOX? I can't believe it's still hard, all right? It's 17 years old, right? It's got a driving license, right? It's really old stuff, and it's still proving hard to do. But actually, in one client, we've turned that into a global ERM program to really wrap in, if you can't do this, guys, if we can't do SOX, and it's been around for 17 years, my word, what are we doing about this other stuff? Let's get our arms around it. Let's join up the teams, about 20 different risk teams. Let's get them all together. The next one down, this emerging risks. An organization had a very, very scary near miss. And it thought it was a black swan. Oh, we couldn't have seen this coming. Really? Actually, you'd already had this problem in one of your other organizations. I can't say where it is because you might guess who they are. But in another part of your business, but you had no way of aggregating that risk and no way of talking about it. And actually, different risk departments had seen the same problem and no one spoke to each other. So that's all around an integrated, and actually, sorry, you're spot on, right? How do we build an integrated, collaborative risk function where everybody's talking, right? They've got a center of excellence around risk now, and it's getting really, really excited. And actually, they've got the most excited risk people I've ever seen because they can all see how they can add value and they can all see an exciting career. And the last one is, a financial crime issue in a global firm, and it's given us the opportunity to really challenge the operating model. Back to the stuff I was talking about, and their issue is first line of defense. It's the honest conversation about, we don't really have a first line of defense, crumbs. You guys have been living off us for a long, long time. We've been doing all the work, and actually now you're blaming us. These issues are yours. Let's use that as the opportunity. So there's some common themes in all of those, and I'll just you can see those on the right-hand side. But you need to get some exec sponsorship. You need to start joining this stuff up and start adding value because that's how to do it. I guarantee most of us are struggling with a lack of clarity of roles or responsibilities. It's everywhere, okay? And for some reason, the most acute in risk and compliance functions. Simplify and make life easy. The financial crime example on this diagram, we're putting in a GRC system. Not because, actually, it's a really good idea because we need to get all the controls sorted out and there's a hell of a lot of work to do. But partly because it's just going to make life so easy for the first line to comply, to make this work. And the final point is, we all hear about a growth mindset organization, right? Risk is probably the most important. You're the guys with the black boxes. You're the guys that need to be able to come back to the organization and say, if we don't learn from this, it's going to happen again. Growth and driving an organization to start learning in a different way comes out of risk management. This is the value you add. So, we need to think differently, okay? So my ask of all of you is when we're in here next year, is we've all done something different, all right? And again, it's easy for me to say. So let's talk about a practical example. The trick in all of this is actually engaging the CEO or engaging a senior sponsor to get involved. And that is back to that quicker, smarter, better, cheaper, whizzier element. And so what we've done, we don't often lead on technology because we usually, it's usually part of a broader solution we're working through. But we've put a lot of effort into something called powered risk, and I'm going to talk you through that in a second. And the point of that is, how do we make it easy for businesses to solve their risk and compliance sort of operating model problems? How do we drive up performance? And what we found is that the easier we make it, the easier it is to actually get the program off the ground. And so this is about a cloud-based solution with a whole lot of IP already built in to just take away those barriers for change. And a key part of this is that design and deliver model. So it allows us to get in, even if someone says, I need a GRC solution. We'll say, but actually, can we have a design conversation with you? And in fact, can we have a mindset conversation with you? Because we're not going to put in some technology randomly. It's got to drive value, and you need to understand it, and it's an opportunity to do that. And it's not easy every time, but we always aim for that conversation. And that way, you can drive a transformation as opposed to just a simple implementation. So we have something called powered risk, and at the heart of powered risk is metric stream. And hopefully all of you are doing cool stuff with metric stream at the moment. But as I said, it's not about tech or just about tech. It's about having that dialogue and having that conversation and thinking about the case for change. And how do we make that happen? Well, this is about a really robust solution where sort of 80% of it is pre-configured, right? In this day and age, we must have libraries of our controls. We must have KRIs. The similarity, Soren, again, you are my favorite person. Your control frameworks are the same as your control frameworks. The guys, all of you who are doing SOX, it's all the same stuff. Why isn't that put into a library? Why would you start again? Why would you make life hard? So we've got 331 controls and KRIs. We've got 73 risk management processes. And I can go on and on and on and on. 25 predefined roles. It's a lift and drop, and that's what's exciting about this. And as I said, one of those clients that you saw the example of, the reason we're putting in is because this is just making life easy. And if you make life easy, you'll do it, right? If it's hard, you won't. The other example that we've got is a very large private equity business. And their biggest issue is, one, they need to get their own compliance, but they've got a hell of a lot of investments. And again, how do they track those investments throughout their investment cycle to when they IPO? And again, what a great thing to do is use a GRC solution, because actually what you're doing is you're driving risk and compliance into those organizations in a really easy way. And actually, this system isn't just their risk and compliance dashboard, it's their business dashboard. And so now what you've got is an investment tool and a portfolio management tool all in one. And also they can drive the whole workflow and expectations with the senior stakeholders, with the sort of non-execs and the chairman. So it's very exciting. I'm very excited by it. I hope you are, and I hope you're thinking, I hope this has driven a few thoughts in your head. So why powered risk? There's some stuff there you can read. I've sort of talked about it. But for me, the headlines really are, make it easy. This stuff gets delivered in weeks, not years. So on average, I think we think this is about 50% quicker than doing a package selection and implementation. In many of our cases, we're taking out 40% FTEs and keeping the great people to go and do better things and get much more into that strategic value-adding role. And the thing I love most about this is once you get this type of system in place, you drive up collaboration, you drive up engagement, and you can really unlock those ways of working which are holding you back. So I think there is a new phase to risk management. There's a radical opportunity for everybody to get out of that sort of slow evolution into that step change that you need to think about. So hopefully that's been of value, and hopefully it stimulated some thinking for you. So any questions?
Thank you, Matt. We'll take some questions now. If there are any questions, please raise your hand. I'll come over.
it was that awful. No one wants to ask a question.
In terms of the second line of defense, what do you think will happen to that over the years?
So we've sort of touched on this, and having been very closely aligned to regulatory compliance, you know, a lot of this should be coded. A lot of this can be. By the way, we're working for a very large .com, and they don't have paper. And no, I really mean they don't have paper. They don't have policies. They don't want policies. And so we've put this straight into code. And so they happen to be caught by most of the major global regulation. And they've put this stuff straight into code. And so I'm not saying overnight, you know, that we're going to get rid of the second line, right? But I'm just trying to shake you up to the idea that actually we can really innovate around driving up first-line accountability, first-line visibility of what they need to do, and then build, you know, and then look at the expertise that you need around regulation, etc. But we should be looking at software solutions, and we should be looking at, you know, AI and algorithms that can really help drive this, and really help to innovate, and really help to sort of unlock that, you know, the constant need to check. And you know, where I used to work, we used to have checkers checking the checkers. We don't need that anymore. Let's start thinking about building those platforms, as you know, as you talked about, Soren. How do we standardize? But then where we innovate, where we're different, is where our competitive advantage is. Okay, that's what needs to happen. So that's my view on second line. So I'm not trying to be controversial for the sake of it, but I do think bringing in technology means we can you know, in all organisations, if you have got a fat second line, you need to make it slimmer and put that responsibility in the first line. I think it's a point where we can really thin that second line down with the use of technology. So that oversight is done by technology, and everybody, and the real responsibility, accountability can be given to the first line because they've got the information to use it. So I hope that answers your question.
Any other questions?
I'm obviously standing between you and drinks or something. So. Anyway, thank you very much, and I hope that's been thought-provoking for you. Thank you.